Let us continue our discussion on crack tip stress and displacement fields. We had seen elaborately that in theory of elasticity, once the stress function is specified, the problem is completely solved. And in the case of a problem of a crack under mode 1 loading, the Airy stress function is given as real part of z double bar plus y imaginary part of z bar. The z is a Westergaard stress function. We are yet to see for the case of a mode 1 problem what is its form. But what if we had done in the last class was, we had elaborately seen that whatever the function phi that we have taken, it indeed satisfies the biharmonic equation del power 4 phi equal to 0, and in the process we have developed all the differentials, dou phi by dou x, dou squared phi by dou x squared, dou q phi by dou x cube, dou power 4 phi by dou x power 4. And in fact, if you have done any clerical error in the last class, you could see these and edit them appropriately. And when you look at here, this dou squared phi by dou x squared is given as real part of z plus y imaginary part of z prime. This directly gives you the stress component sigma y, and dou squared phi by dou y squared will give you stress component sigma x. And what we looked at was, when you substitute these appropriate in the biharmonic equation is satisfied. So, we have made sure that we are working with a stress function which is a valid candidate for solution. At this stage, let us look at it this way. We will also look at the boundary condition. Then we will compare the solution what we obtain from the stress field we obtain with that of the experiments. Then we will investigate what kind of corrections that we need to make. At that stage, we will come back and raise a very fundamental question, whether the stress function we have selected is indeed comprehensive or not. So, we will keep that question in abeyance for the time being. Then we move on to defining the problem. We have to look at the boundary conditions, and I had mentioned for visualization purpose, you see the crack faces opening as an ellipse, and I also said there is close link between ellipse and crack problem. Once we develop the displacement field equations, we would go and find out how the crack faces open up mathematically, and we will also see what is the kind of curve that we are going to get. These boundary conditions are very simple and straightforward. So, on the crack faces, you need to have sigma y equal to 0 and tau x y equal to 0. At infinity, we have already noted that we are applying a biaxial stress field. So, this should be satisfied. And when Westergaard reported his solution in 1939, he actually considered a family of problems in which along y equal to 0 for any value of x, the in plane shear stress should be equal to 0. In fact, he solved a set of problems, about 8 or 9 in one single paper. He solved conventional problems as well as problems involving cracks, problems involving single crack as well as multiple cracks. And what is the kind of stress function that he had proposed for the case of central crack in an infinite strip? The stress function takes the form capital Z equal to sigma z divided by root of z squared minus a squared. You know, this stress function looks very simple, and if you look at for mode 2 as well as mode 3, the form is still maintained. That is the greatest advantage of Westergaard's approach. Not only this stress function is meant for a single crack. With simple modification of this, he was able to get the stress function for the case of evenly spaced cracks, several cracks. And if you look at, when you want to find out solution for a finite body or a body with single edge crack or double edge crack, for all of them series of cracks would be the starting point to arrive at a solution. So, the beauty of Westergaard's approach is he had coined the stress function Z. With simple modifications you could get solution for a variety of problems. In the subsequent discussion also we will keep this as capital Z and get the expression for sigma x, sigma y, tau x y. Later on we will substitute the specific stress function. This is how we will proceed. And what you will have to look at is, when you say along y equal to 0, your shear stress should be equal to 0, is easily satisfied. If you look at the basic expression for shear stress, it is nothing but minus y times real part of z prime. So, when y equal to 0, shear stress component is automatically satisfied. We will have to verify whether sigma y is 0 on the crack faces, and what happens to sigma y and sigma x at infinity. And I had drawn your attention that the expression for sigma y and sigma x, there is only a sign change of the second term. Otherwise, you will have to worry about what is capital Z and what is capital Z prime. What you will have to do is, you will have to verify whether the boundary conditions are satisfied by the Westergaard's stress function. In fact, you have already got the solution, we are only re-verifying whether the solution is correct, because by satisfying the boundary condition we are not evaluating any coefficients. In the case of a beam problem, we saw several coefficients and I said you evaluate the coefficients by satisfying the boundary conditions. Now, our focus is only to reconfirm whether the solution obtained by Westergaard is correct or not. And what you will have to look at, I have to find out what is sigma y on the crack faces, and this has two terms. The first term is real part of z and the second term is y imaginary part of z prime. On the crack face y equal to 0, so the second term goes to 0. So, I will have to go and find out whether on the crack face real part of z exists or not. If I am able to show that you will have only imaginary part of z, then my job is done, and that is indeed so, because you are taking on the crack face x is between minus a to plus a. And when you look at this expression, root of z squared minus a squared, this is imaginary. See, while discussing I interchangeably use z or capital Z. So, depending on the context you make an interpretation, but nevertheless while you write, ensure you make a distinction between small z and capital Z, otherwise you will really get confused. So, what we are able to now show is, on the crack face sigma y is 0 as well as shear stress is 0. So, the boundary condition 1 is fully satisfied, and let us look at the boundary condition 2. We are going to look at what happens at the far field, that means small z approaches infinity, or in other words z is much larger than a. So, I could simplify this expression approaching small z. So, that means what happens to the stress function becomes just a number sigma, it is constant, it is not a function of z. So, when it is not a function of z, z prime is 0, because if you look at the expression for sigma x or sigma y, you need to know what is capital Z and what is capital Z prime. Now, we know all of them at infinity. So, when you look at this, the expression for sigma x is given as real part of capital Z minus y imaginary part of capital Z prime, that goes to sigma, and there is only a small sign change in the second term. Sigma y also becomes sigma. So, this you will have to keep in mind, you should never forget this. This step clearly brings out that Westergaard's solution is indeed for a central crack in a biaxial tension specimen. It is not subjected to uniaxial tension. Your boundary condition clearly shows that you are really looking at a biaxial problem. Biaxial tension is the load that you have applied, and shear stress is obviously 0, because Z prime is 0 at infinity. And we have already looked at on the y equal to 0, tau xy is 0. So, all the 3 boundary conditions are satisfied. See, as of now, how does the solution look like? I am having capital Z, I am satisfying what happened at the crack faces, and I am satisfying what happens at the infinity. So, that means it gives you a semblance that the solution what you get at this stage is valid for the entire field. It is also like a closed form solution. Then where does the difference comes? We would see sooner. Why we say that we are talking about near tip stress field or very near tip stress field. So, that comes when I do the origin shifting. Whatever the stress function that we have looked at is given for the axis x comma y, where the origin is at the center of the crack tip. Now, we shift this origin to the tip of the crack, and to aid your visualization, we have also put, you have tension on the y axis as well as tension in the x axis. So, it is subjected to biaxial tension at infinity. Just because people solve the problem of a plate with a circular hole, plate with an elliptical hole with a uniaxial tension, then Griffith, when he developed the energy release rate, he took a central crack in a tension strip. People extrapolated blindly that Westergaard solution is also meant for a uniaxial tension strip with a central crack. It is not so. We have looked at the boundary condition, we have reconvinced ourselves that it is actually for a biaxial tension. Now, if we want to get the stress field, I need to take this step, and how does this modification affect us? So, when you substitute small z equal to z naught plus a, where z naught is this distance, measurement from the crack tip, your Westergaard stress function would change, and it would be something like this. As engineers, what we would do is, we want to find out the stress field in the very near vicinity of the crack tip. For that, what we are going to do is, we are going to take z naught is very, very small in comparison to the crack length. So, whatever the solution that I am attempting is for the case when my domain is very small close to the crack tip. So, when I do this, this expression could be simplified, and you can simply write this capital Z as Z naught plus A would become simply A, because Z naught is small, and when you say Z naught is small, Z naught square will be very small. So, we will eliminate this. So, I will have only sigma A divided by root of 2 Z naught A. Which could be recast in this fashion. See, you have to be very careful in looking at these steps. We have looked at the boundary condition. The boundary condition has shown that you are really looking for a biaxial tension problem, that is number 1. But when we actually want to find out the stress field, we are bringing in an approximation. The domain in which we want to find the solution is much smaller compared to the crack length, and we simplify. So, at this stage, whatever the solution we are going to get with this stress function would be valid only very close to the crack tip. So, it is not a closed form solution in the sense which you come across in theory of elasticity. It is only a near field solution. And now you will have to look at further simplifications. We would also bring in the introduction of a new parameter k, because we are discussing mode 1 situation. We will take this as k1 equal to sigma root of pi a. I have already mentioned that this was introduced by Irwin in honor of his collaborator Keyes. You have a terminology sigma root pi a. You know, if you look at fracture mechanics literature, people have debated whether pi should be included in this or not. People thought even sigma root a would be sufficient. There is a school of thought, because you should also know that without pi also this could have been discussed and the whole of fracture mechanics could have developed. But pi has come to stay, because Irwin has defined it only like this. So, with this modification, the stress function also can be recast. So, when you substitute this definition, this will reduce to k1 by root of 2 pi z naught power minus half, and z naught can be written as r e power I theta. This could be further simplified in terms of cos theta plus I sin theta. That is how we will proceed. Finally, we will get the stress field in terms of r and theta. That is what we are proceeding at. And we would also look at a basic definition of what is a stress intensity factor, because we have what is the Westergaard stress function. The moment I write the stress function in this way, you should recognize, because we have said z naught is very small compared to the crack length, this will provide you only a near tip stress field. Once you know z, z prime is straightforward to write, there is no difficulty at all. And I have also mentioned, while discussing the problem of a central crack, Westergaard also provided a series of stress functions which could be used for multiple cracks, crack with wedge load. All of these we would see in the next chapter. For all of them, you would have a form of stress function. So, once a stress function is given, from which how to find out the expression for stress intensity factor, and what is the basic definition of stress intensity factor. With these two purposes in mind, we will look at how stress intensity factor is defined mathematically. So, if I have a stress function z, and mind you, it should be referred with respect to the crack tip as the origin. In order to distinguish that the origin is shifted, I am using the symbol z naught. if stress function is known, multiply that by root of 2 pi z naught and put the limit z naught tends to 0. Then whatever the expression that you get will be the stress intensity factor for that particular problem. So, this is again an advantage from Westergaard's approach. He was able to provide analytical expression for a variety of problems. So, people felt that they are able to apply fracture mechanics to certain situations in practice. And I have already mentioned that K has a units of MPa root meter, which is quite different from our knowledge of stress concentration factor, which was just a number. In the case of stress intensity factor, you have a very funny units. Where do you get hurt? When you do the unit conversion from FPS system to SI system, you have to be very careful. If you are not careful, you can get erroneous results. And again we will look at the advantage of the contribution by Irwin. By coining SIF, fracture mechanics took a giant leap forward. So, what people felt was energy release rate as a concept, it was quite good, but it was very clumsy to evaluate and handle. On the other hand, by focusing on the crack tip, Irwin coined stress intensity factor, which provided a different way of looking at the crack problem, that provided greater insights and people were able to advance further in fracture mechanics. Soon we are going to look at the stress field. Based on that, we could also have definitions for the stress intensity factors. For the mode 1 stress intensity factor, you take the expression for sigma yy at theta equal to 0, pre multiplied by root of 2 pi r, and in the limit r tends to 0, whatever you get is the mode 1 stress intensity factor. You can write for mode 2 as well as mode 3, and the difference is the stress component that you are going to look at. In the case of mode 1, you are looking at sigma yy at theta equal to 0. In the case of mode 2, you are looking at tau xy at theta equal to 0, which is a in plane shear stress. In the case of mode 3, you are going to look at tau yz at theta equal to 0, which is the out of plane shear stress. And these definitions would become useful when you are actually developing numerical methods and you want to find out what is the value of K. They could be used to find out from numerical solution how to get K. And from now onwards, you will have the title very focusedly given as very near tip stress field equations, because we have shifted the origin. In the process of shifting the origin, we had brought in a simplification that Z naught is much smaller compared to the crack length. And in theory of elasticity, once phi is known, stress components could be determined. This is just to re-emphasize your understanding, and the stress field is now summarized in terms of the Westergaard stress function. You have sigma x sigma y tau xy, which is equal to real part of capital Z minus y imaginary part of capital Z prime, then real part of capital Z plus y imaginary part of capital Z prime minus y real part of capital Z prime. And what is the corresponding Airy stress function for this problem? This is phi equal to real part of Z double bar plus y imaginary part of Z bar. If you look at this expression, this is valid for the entire field, whether we choose z as what was given by Westergaard, that is sigma z divided by root of z squared minus a squared, or it becomes a near field solution when z equal to k 1 by root of 2 pi z naught. And in fact, in the original paper Westergaard, when he proposed, he showed for a class of problems the stress field is like this. This is very generic. This becomes a closed form solution or a near tip stress field solution depending on how do you express capital Z. If you express it like this is valid only for Z naught is very small compared to crack length. So, that is what is emphasized here. So, you are really talking about very near tip stress field equations. Now, we will get the expression in terms of r and theta. This we had seen already. So, I can write capital Z as k 1 by root of 2 pi r into cos theta by 2 minus I sin theta by 2. After few classes you will get accustomed to this kind of an expression, and you might eventually remember the first term, because for me to get the stress field I need to know what is capital Z and capital Z prime. If I get them in terms of r and theta, I could substitute it in the expressions and get the stress field in terms of r and theta. Z1 prime is given as minus of k 1 divided by 2 z naught root of 2 pi z naught, and if you recognize, this is nothing but z naught power 3 by 2. So, I could write this as k 1 by 2 into root of 2 pi r power 3 by 2 cos 3 theta by 2 minus I sin 3 theta by 2. With such an expression, it is possible for me to get the stress field, and stress field is given in terms of r and theta, and it is as follows. You have k 1 by root of 2 pi r cos theta by 2 multiplied by 1 minus sin theta by 2 sin 3 theta by 2. I would appreciate you go to your rooms and then substitute the values of capital Z and Z prime appropriately and verify whether you are able to get the final expressions like what I have shown here. The second term is 1 plus sin theta by 2 sin 3 theta by 2, and tau xy is sin theta by 2 cos 3 theta by 2, and this gives certain understanding what happens near the crack tip. See, if you look at the component sigma x, sigma y, tau xy, the strength of all this is determined by the value of k. So, the strength of the field is dictated by this, that is why you call this as a stress intensity factor, and the field variation is defined by this r comma theta. The magnitude is dictated by a single parameter. And another one is when r goes to 0, these values reach infinity, and you have 1 by root r, and the singularity is known as root r singularity in fracture mechanics literature. In plasticity situation, you will have a r singularity. The singularity strength would be different for different cases, people have noted that, and root r singularity is a very famous terminology which you come across very often in fracture mechanics. The elasticity solution gives the stress field approaches infinity as 1 by root r. Right now what you have, we have been successful in getting the stress field very close to the crack tip, because we have made an approximation Z naught is very small in comparison to A. Is it useful for experimentalists? If you raise that kind of a question, the answer is no, because the region of its validity is very small. In fact, conventional books on fracture mechanics provide you only this solution. They do not even discuss the higher order terms. In fact, we would develop higher order terms in a few classes afterwards, because right now we will look at stress field, then displacement field. From displacement field, we will get back to our energy release rate chapter. We would look at how to calculate the energy based on the crack phase displacement, and we would also find an identity between stress intensity factor and energy release rate. We will do all of them, then come to mode 2. Look at mode 2, then at length discuss the higher order solution for fracture mechanics. So, we will have to wait until you come to that stage. That is needed if you want to evaluate the stress intensity factor based on experimental mechanics. So, we would do that. The important point I would like to emphasize is the Westergaard solution is actually meant for a biaxial loading, that you will have to keep in mind. Since you have got the stress field close to the crack tip, for finite body problems, use of only singular stress field solution was not found to be sufficient to model the experimentally observed stress fields. See, theory of elasticity can provide solution only for infinite geometry. All practical geometries are finite. Ultimately, I have to get the solution for a finite geometry, because the solution is very close to the crack tip. People have extrapolated this for finite geometry also, but you need to make appropriate corrections. So, later boundary collocation techniques were developed, which really gave solution for finite body problems. Here the focus, what you will have to keep in mind is, singular solution is not sufficient, we have to look for much more than that. And for this, modifications to Westergaard's solution were suggested by several investigators. People looked at what kind of approximations we have made, have we made any mistake in satisfying the boundary condition, so on and so forth. We will look at one after another. We will first see what is the kind of result we get from Westergaard solution. We have seen the stress field, and I have been saying that we would look at use of photoelasticity in the advancement of fracture mechanics, and how would we use photoelasticity for this purpose. We have to find out the suitability of the stress field equations in fracture mechanics. How do we verify that? We have seen in the initial lecture that photoelastic fringe contours are actually isochromatics, which represent contours of constant principal stress difference, which could also be looked at as maximum shear stress. Actually, it is sigma 1 minus sigma 2 divided by 2 is what you get in the case of isochromatics, and maximum shear stress is given as square root of sigma x minus sigma y whole square divided by 4 plus tau x y whole square. At this stage of the crack problem, we have the expressions for sigma x, sigma y, tau x y in the near vicinity of the crack tip. So, we would be in a position to analytically calculate what is the maximum shear stress. And I also drew your attention a difference between in plane shear stress and maximum shear stress, very important. These are all subtle concepts. We wanted in plane shear stress to be 0 along the crack axis, that we saw it as satisfied, but we did not want to have any such restriction for maximum shear stress. Let us see what kind of solution we get. I have mentioned this earlier, it is the geometric features of the fringe patterns that have alerted the researchers in arriving at a suitable stress field equations to model experimentally observed fringes better. When I make this statement, you have to see what kind of fringe patterns you get for Westergaard solution and what way you saw in the case of actual problems with short cracks and long cracks, what kind of a comparison, then we can make a judgment. Now, I have this stress field equations available. So, as I mentioned, you could calculate maximum shear stress and make it as a plot, and this is a numerical plot. Probably I could magnify it for you. What do I find here? The fringes are symmetrical about x axis, fringes are also symmetrical about y axis, and along the crack axis you have a constant fringe order 0. See, we did not want this, we did not impose maximum shear stress is 0 along the crack axis. We have not proceeded from that perspective at all, but we are finding now when you say tau xy equal to 0, automatically tau max is also 0 along the crack axis. This is the source of confusion. Not only the source of confusion, but the source by which people looked at the procedure and they came out with a very interesting observation. See, none of the problems in theory of elasticity you really question the stress function. You take a stress function and then look at sigma x, sigma y, tau xy and let us satisfy the boundary condition. In this case, we have done all that. We have taken a stress function, it satisfies the biharmonic equation, and we have looked at the boundary condition, it satisfies all the boundary condition. So, we have not done any mistake in the mathematical analysis, but finally, we are getting a solution. I am sure you have already seen the photoelastic fringes, we would see them again. It is nowhere compared to that. And another important observation is along the crack axis you find the maximum shear stress is also 0. I would appreciate you make a sketch of this, you need to have this information available in your notes, and whatever I have said is summarized here. The isochromatics are symmetric about both x and y axis. The fringe order along the crack axis is 0. You know, for analytical people who are not exposed to experiments, it is better to say the maximum shear stress is also 0 along the crack axis, which we did not intend to be, it is accidental. The solution says maximum shear stress is also 0, but you go to the experiment, you see a different picture. These experimental fringe patterns we have seen earlier, and what are the features that we have noted? First observation is that the fringes are forward tilted. This is one observation. The second observation is subtle, you have to view it properly. I can find out the maximum point of this, and this angle, the angle of tilt varies and approaches 90 degree as one goes closer to the crack tip. That means, the fringes tilt like this, and you found in Westergaard solution the fringe is exactly symmetrical about the y axis, whereas here it is forward tilted. I mean it appears as backward tilted on the screen. So, I should put the hand like this. So, this is forward tilted. And another subtle observation is you find the color along the crack axis gradually changes from some shades of gray to finally becoming more and more black, which indicates that there is a variation of maximum shear stress along the crack axis. It is not 0, that you have to keep in mind, which is not very clear in this fringe pattern. We would see another fringe pattern. We will look at long crack, and in this you see very clearly I have a loop here, I have another loop here. So, there is variation of maximum shear stress along the crack axis. So, if I say that I have understood the stress field in the vicinity of the crack tip, my analytical solution should also explain what is this. Only then the analytical solution is correct. See, for the case of experimentalists, we cannot go very close to the crack tip and then take readings, because in the very near vicinity of the crack tip you will have anelastic deformation and no mathematical solution is available for this zone. I can only collect from this zone. On the other hand, people who are working on numerical methodologies, because they force how the crack tip to behave, they can go very close to the crack tip. So, they were really not worried about necessity for higher order terms. They were living comfortably with singular solution. Whatever the solution that we have got, which has a term 1 by root r, is called a singular solution. So, they were comfortable with the singular solution. Only experimentalists felt that this is not so and we have to do something about it. And if you look at the historical development, in 1952 Wells and Post performed the first set of dynamic crack propagation experiment using photoelasticity. So, they captured crack traversing a plate, they saw the fringe pattern, and those fringe patterns had a forward tilt. These fringe patterns need to be analyzed. Irwin came up with a intelligent argument that you should add a term sigma naught x to the sigma x stress term. He simply added you have to have minus sigma naught x 0 0, and this he argued because you have this as a biaxial solution. So, in order to compensate for whatever the experiment that they did, which was uniaxial loading, he added this based on simple arguments, not with great mathematical development. What he did was he simply added a second term in the series. The second term contained only correction to the sigma x stress term, which is a constant value, the other two values are 0. How this was justified? If you plot the fringe pattern, which are nothing but contours of maximum shear stress, they appeared like this. It was a bonanza. Just by adding one single term, the fringes got tilted forward. Not only this, as you go close to the crack tip, I think I could enlarge this, the fringes also become straight, as that was observed in experiments. So, in one stroke, two important observations of experiments were satisfied. The fringes were forward tilted, then the tilt angle is also becoming straight as we go to the crack tip. I think I should put it this way, forward tilted, and then it is becoming straight at the crack tip. We would also see the experimental fringe pattern. So, this matched very well with the analytical equation by just adding a term sigma naught x. But if you look at what happens along the crack axis, when you look at the expression for maximum shear stress, tau squared maximum shear stress gives equal to sigma x minus sigma y whole squared divided by 4 plus tau x y whole squared. This gives you a constant value of maximum shear stress. In the case of Westergaard solution, the maximum shear stress was 0. Now, it is a constant value. In an experiment involving longer cracks, we saw that this is varying, but for the time being you should be happy when the crack is shorter. Now, we have captured a solution which has a second term which is known as sigma naught x in experimental mechanics literature. In numerical literature, it is known as a T stress. In fact, if you look at the historical development, it was only in 1977 Eftis, Subramanian and Leibowitz came out with analytical argument on the existence of at least a second term to be considered. And now, people are focusing on influence of T stress, and also they are using this to find out even criteria for fracture. But if you look at the literature in 1957, Williams came out with a eigenvalue solution. In fact, it had several terms in the series and the second term had this constant stress value. In fact, people did not pay attention to it. That is a surprise, because Westergaard solution was so popular, it was introduced in 1939, and not only that, for a variety of problems he could get analytical expression. People paid more attention to his contribution, and Williams' contribution was not noted, mainly because the analytical and numerical people were happy with singular solution, because they could go very close to the crack tip. Experimentalists were not happy with it. It is only experimentalists who emphasize initially the need and requirement for considering higher order terms. The Irwin's modification is at least you should have a correction to sigma x stress term. So, as I had mentioned, the fringes are forward tilted as in the experiment, and you can say Irwin's modification reasonably models stress field in short cracks. So, that is a comfort. So, the Westergaard solution was useful, we were able to get the stress field. We have looked at only the first term. In fact, you should look at this as a series of terms, and people attempted. What kind of attempts that they looked at? What kind of gross simplification we attempted to do? If you look at the solution development, in origin shifting what we did, we simply said Z naught is much smaller compared to A. That could be relaxed, and this was done by Tada, Paris and Irwin. So, people tried all tricks that are available to them for them to correct. You have simply modified Z naught plus A as A and Z naught plus 2A as 2A and so on. Instead of taking it that way, you could express the denominator in terms of a binomial series, and you are getting a series solution. At least try to write the form of the solution, if not the complete solution, try to write the form of this binomial solution. It gives a comfort to people who are analytically focused that I have many number of terms in the series. So, if I take several terms, it would model larger and larger areas of zones near the crack tip. It is not so. This is the only place where we had done a gross simplification. You put in a better type of mathematics, then what you find is, though it is not shown here, the observation is when you look at the maximum shear stress, this predicts no fringe order along the crack axis. that means it is not useful. So, a modification in the mathematics alone has not resulted in arriving at a improved solution. So, you have to look at fundamentally what is it that we have to do. So, only in this kind of a problem we find even we go back and question the stress function and modify the stress function, which I would postpone for another few classes, because we would look at other important results then get into this. So, in this class what we have looked at was we have developed the very near tip stress field equations in mode 1 type of problems. We have looked at the definition of stress intensity factor. We also looked at that the stress field what we have obtained is valid very close to the crack tip. If you want to analyze even short cracks in experiments, I need at least a second term which was introduced by Irwin. And we have also noted that you need to look at much more fundamentally whether the stress function we have taken for this problem is a valid one to explain the features that you come across in photoelastic experiments.